One. We're live.
Grand Rising, Grand Rising. This is the Straight Talk Network and the Straight Talk Morning Show. My name is Andre Hill. I'm your host. I got my co-host and engineer, Andre Hill Jr. What's going on, man?
Everything is good. Like you say, fantastic and supernatural?
Yes, sir. We have our chairman of our political action committee and a council of elders over our United Aboriginal American Republic, Mr. Terrence Lake. How you doing, sir?
Oh, Grand Rising, everyone. I'm fantastic, sitting here with goosebumps on, waiting for things to get started.
So, bar none, this is going to be one of the greatest shows that we've done because this is a collaboration of different cultures, collaboration of former football players. The colonel that we're about to introduce was a linebacker, and me being a wide receiver, I had all the respect in the world for the linebackers because if you had to run a zero when I was at FAMU, we had a play called a zero. That means you got to run behind the linebackers, catch the ball, and hope they don't catch you. So I want to introduce to you, without further ado, Colonel Donald Heckert, retired United States Air Force. How you doing this morning, Colonel?
Doing well, Andre. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So we have been working on getting the colonels so we can have a live photograph, but because of the level, the high frequency of knowledge that we're about to share with the world, the technical difficulties were enormous. Even when I was talking with the colonel, there was some strange feedback. It's like, we really don't want this to happen, but by these low frequency entities, but we persisted and we're here. And so again, the colonel is, an extraordinary human. I met him in Washington, D.C. At the Stephen Greer's sponsored disclosure conference, where including the colonel, many people from that have been exposed either in the military or as contractors of the United States government came forth and said, we are not alone, and there's technology here that's mind-boggling, that's being held back, because if they release this technology, they can no longer enslave you. They have to let things be free. They have to allow you to evolve spiritually. And so part of what this show is all about is, with the colonel coming forward, he has documents and there's some limitations, but the fact that he's coming to a reckoning in his life that the generation of children behind us are going to be in dire straits if they don't receive the truth, if they don't have a platform outlining, detailing how we're going to move forward or elevate or evolve as a species to take care of our own planet. We have to demonstrate this to the Most High, and so this collaboration of the men on this show today is a demonstration that one, we want our species to survive. Two, that we need to protect our women and our children, and we're willing to put our lives on the line for this, and send a statement to these low frequency extraterrestrials and humans. Your contract of death, destruction, lies, and cheating is up, and it's time for you to go ahead and pay piper, and raise up off our planet, and that's what this is all about. So on that note, I'm going to read a little more information. Now, you may think this is long, but this man is exceptional. And I want to read to you a little information about who he is and what he's been about. Don was born in July the 20th, 1945 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. He is a command pilot with over 7,000 hours of flight time and over 30 different types of aircraft, with more than 100 combat missions in the RF-4C and the U-2 Aura over Vietnam and the Middle East. He flew the U-2R/TR-1 operationally for 11 years. Nuclear sampling is one of the many missions of the U-2. Don flying his U-2 was the first to fly into a nuclear debris cloud at the largest Chinese atmospheric nuclear explosion. In Alaska, he commanded our nation's largest nuclear detection capability, and later as a program director of the U-2TR-1, the SR-71, and other classified developmental programs at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He just justified Black World's budgets to Congress, worked directly with Ben Rich of Lockheed Skunk Works. Now that's very important. We got to talk about that. And performed duties in Area 51. Upon leaving the Air Force, he pursued a career in Alaska aviation as a pilot, instructor, safety officer, director of training, and director of operations for 3 Alaskan airlines. He is a Federal Aviation Administration certified airframe and power plant mechanic with inspection authorization. He holds a U.S. Navy certification as a radiation protection officer, possesses a paratrooper rating from the U.S. Army, and was a nuclear delivery combat rated pilot. Don survived for 4 days in a wintertime research aircraft crash north of the Arctic Circle. Don is a chaplain and service officer for the Veterans of Foreign Affairs in Alaska and would like to share his 2 documented UFO encounters with RF-4 and the U-2R and other related events and career. Hey, Colonel, I like to refer to him as Colonel. That's a mouthful.
Well, thanks, Andre. Probably too much for the listeners.
Hey, but it's critical for them to understand, that the things that you've experienced. And like I said, I've met the Colonel in person. He's a mountain of a man and a beautiful soul that realizes at this point that it's time for us to start teaching the truth. So I'm going to ask all my audience, all of our audience, to keep this man in your spiritual prayers. You know, I'm not a praying type of man. I believe in the manifestation through positive thought. But in this particular case, for a man to come forward, with this sort of dossier to want to help our species overcome, to pass the test, elevate to a higher frequency, I commend you, sir. So, Colonel, give us a little input on all of these things we just talked about.
Well, thanks, Andre, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience. My background in aviation and my father's background in aviation from World War II piloting in Guadalcanal and as a test pilot later at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and throughout the country has allowed me to have a different perspective than most people. I had the privilege of meeting Andre at, again, the National Press Conference in DC last June. And I was really touched by his interest in the UFO and the release of information and the technology associated with that. And as you heard in my brief, I've had a lot of experience in that area, to include 2 different UFO sightings that are documented. And what's interesting about these, and I will relay both these to you initially to establish the interest that I have, I can swear to you that everything I'm about to tell you is the truth, and it's documented both in recordings and photos. My first encounter with the U-2 with the UFO. And again, I was flying, and this is right after a bombing halt in Southeast Asia. The Vietnam War was winding down, and we had a number of operations that had titles to them. And Linebacker 1 and 2 were when they bombed the North Vietnam with the B-52s. Linebacker 3 was the particular operation I was flying, and the RF-4 has capability day, night, and also has a very unique system called an AD-5, which is an infrared multispectral system. And it happens to be mounted on the bottom of the airplane, on the bottom of the fuselage. Obviously, when you're flying above things, it looks down. The RF-4 is a 2-seat fighter, and the back seater, we call him the guy in back, or the GIP, or weapon system operator. But we're a team that work together to gather both intelligence and to photograph both pre-strike and post-strike activity. My particular mission would require 2 fighter armed D model, and they were called the F-4Ds, as escorts because we were going into hostile territory. I took off right at sunset and headed to a waiting area just south of the Laotian border in Thailand, expecting my 2 escorts to be with me very quickly. However, they were delayed for some reason. I still don't know the reason they were delayed that evening, but I'm holding at 14,500 feet in what's called a racetrack pattern. And it's just an odd-long pattern where we're staying south of the border before going into Laos. And my altitude was 14,500 feet. Now, my studies in college involved nuclear physics and space physics and meteorology. And so I'm enjoying the nighttime view of the stars. And we have radar sites that are called ground intercept radar sites. And there were 3 of those that were tracking us at the time. And they give us warning of enemy aircraft attempting to intercept us. Well, again, in my racetrack at 14,500 feet, and all of a sudden I get warnings from all 3 ground control intercept sites that I have a supersonic vehicle directly tracking me and heading for me out of North Vietnam. Obviously, my fighter support wasn't there, and so this has my attention. Within a minute after that, they said, "Oh, don't worry, that target is above 70,000 feet." And so the difference between my altitude and their altitude is 60,000 feet. And so it's rather difficult for something to go that 60,000 feet in a very short while. So I'm relieved. I still don't have my fighter support. I'm coming out of the turn and they say, uh-oh, in 2 seconds, your target went from 70,000 feet down to a co-altitude of 14,500 feet. And it is now 5 miles from your location. Well, there's nothing in the world that I know that can go that distance, 10 miles in 2 seconds, especially vertically. And so that has my attention. We look up, both my backseater and I, and we see a intense blue-white light that is blinding. And that light is associated from my nuclear training as a nuclear activity. It's a if you've driven on the road and seen the brilliant blue xenon lights that they're putting in the headlights occasionally, it's that, but about 100 times more intense. Anyway, when I'm coming out of the turn, that intercept vehicle is 5 miles in front of me, and the GCI site says, can you get us imagery of that vehicle? And I said, I guess so. And so I put the afterburners on. And when you're in a supersonic aircraft, and the RF4 will go over Mach 2, but it only flies for about 25 minutes with the fuel on board at Mach 2. You're covering a lot of territory, but you just don't have a lot of fuel. Anyway, I increased the speed of the aircraft by lighting the afterburners, and I closed to 3 miles. And when I got to the 3 mile point, I was doing Mach 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and the GCI site said it's maintaining your speed, staying exactly 3 miles away. Well, we can see it on radar. We can't see it on that AD5 system because it's on the belly of the airplane and we're looking directly forward. The only way that I'm going to get that sensor on is to go vertical. And so when I reach Mach 1.5, I pitch up, and my backseater says on the scope that he's got that shows the imagery in the back seat, we've got pictures. We've got them. We've got them. That target immediately goes from 14,000 feet to above 80,000 feet in 2 seconds, and it's gone.
Wow.
Disappears. We fly back to the base because I'm out of fuel, land, and the normal people that would debrief me, the intel people, which we're very familiar with, and in a reconnaissance airplane, they always take your maps, go over them, and then you look at the pictures that you've taken on the flight. All of that is removed. I'm told to go away. We will not speak of this. And that is the end of it. Well, I'm not happy about that. And so I get to a phone system called the Audubon system, and I call my first ground control intercept controller, get him on the line and say, hey, I'm the pilot that you were protecting and guiding on that UFO. And he says, oh, yeah, gosh, we're really interested in talking to you. And he says, we can't believe. And then he stops talking and says, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Understand. Goodbye. Click. Well, I've got 2 more sites to call, and I do that in rapid succession. But whoever was talking to him has already canceled that. Nobody will talk to me. The interesting part is within 2 weeks, the backseater is reassigned to the Navy as an Air Force. And I hear nothing more of that until far, far later in my career, where my accesses are changed. The next one is that I had the good fortune of being accepted in the U-2 program. The U-2 is a airplane that flies exceptionally high, right on the edge of space, and you have to wear a spacesuit. It's a single pilot airplane, and your missions are 9 to 11 hours. And so you're all by yourself flying, and it's used to photograph hostile areas and countries and to gather intelligence. It also has a mission where you can, because of being so high, you can look around the curvature of the earth and receive radio contact from basically 800 to 900 miles away. And so it has the ability to capture both electronics and signals intelligence in addition to doing the photographic work. In the photographic work that we do, the pilot is given targets. We study that for 2 days prior to the mission, and then you're allowed to select the time because you can see so much from that perspective above. You can see the cloud cover disappear over the targets, and so you're allowed to select when you will start the photo part of the mission. In this particular mission, I took off in the early afternoon, and I'm obviously going to land at night. And I'd already done my photographic work, and we were doing that photographic work 3 miles off of the demilitarized zone in between North and South Korea. At that point, you're able to, there's a radiation protection that is available, and it's on a slide that blanks out the sun from above on the top of the cockpit. The solar intensity is so great that it overheats you even through your helmet. And so we have this slide that darkens everything. Well, at night, you can slide this out of the way and look at the stars. Well, doing the last portion of my mission, again on a butterfly orbit this time, going the length and breadth of the DMZ, and that same intense blue light that I saw in my RF4 blinds me and illuminates my airplane from above. Now, the world's fastest air-breathing airplane, the SR-71, if you wanted to do a max G U-turn, takes about 160 plus nautical miles to do a U-turn. The U-2 is subsonic, and it can do that same turn in about 7 miles. That makes it impossible for anything going fast to intercept you, and that's a defensive maneuver. The illumination from above gets my attention and frightens me so much that I use that defensive maneuver to turn my U-2, and the blue light tracks me the entire turn, and I abort the mission. Now, I've had missiles shot at me, I've had AAA shot at me, and I can show you all that documentation and the medals, but this really got my attention. And so those are 2 UFO experiences that are documented by multiple sources that relate to some of the release issues that we're discussing and trying to get across to the American public.
So,
yeah, go ahead, Andre.
No, go ahead, Colonel.
So from the next thing that happens to me was that my family felt like the risks were getting pretty severe. Our pilots were so short that I was able to volunteer for a 6-month tour. Normally they're only 70 days. You have to get a training in between, come back to the US. But it took a Secretary of Defense waiver to take my family to a classified location in South Korea and continue to fly that U-2. And at that point, my wife, who worked for Air America during Vietnam, during my one tour, she basically said, "Hey, we have children. You need to take some time off. This is getting a little risky." And so I accepted a job as in the nuclear monitoring area, which better fit my educational background. And so we got to move to Alaska, and I had a number of experiences in Alaska that your audience might like to look at. Probably the first one that I can relay to you so that you can look a little bit more about some of the things that our country's done is talk about a movie that's available for about the last 5 years on Amazon Prime. And it's about the raising of a Soviet submarine from over 3 miles deep in the ocean where it sunk and was nuclear armed. And that's called Azorian, Azorian, the raising of K-129. Additionally, another thing that might be of interest, especially with the things that are happening in Saudi Arabia and Israel and Palestine, the Palestinians right now, there's a thing called VELA, that's capital VELA. And if you put VELA incident, you can read about an interesting detection, again, nuclear, that happened in June of 1979. I think you'll appreciate when you look at either the movie or that incident and read up on about it, you can see that the UFO and the nuclear testing have some great relationships that need to be further explored.
Absolutely.
Anyway, at that point in time, I was able to go to Europe with a brand new airplane called the TR-1. And that was supposed to be a 4-year assignment. And I ended up in the Middle East with another agency, and then went back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for the last 3 years of my Air Force career as a program manager for the, as you mentioned, Andre, the SR-71, the U-2 TR-1, and other international programs. Anyway, am I a believer in UFOs? Absolutely. Do I have documentation? I can't touch it now because it's classified, but I can share that through Dr. Greer and those news conferences and the things that are beginning to be released, that I believe there will be acknowledgement of the truth about UFOs and their technology and the possible meaning that that will have for all people of the world in the very near future. And I appreciate the opportunity, Andre and Chairman and Andre Jr. and your audience for having a chance to talk about it.
Absolutely. So, Colonel, we got a ton of questions. One other thing I like to state, with you coming forward and young men also that appeared before Congress just recently, and of course, the Pentagon is going to continue to deny this because it cuts into their money. The NASA and the Pentagon, they don't want the rest of the taxpaying public to know that all of this technology has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. And there's a better way we can approach this other than you leveraging your political government position to make money to continue to suppress the technology that can make our planet a utopia. And this is what this is all about. And I applaud the Colonel, and I'm also encouraging. I'm going to stand behind the Colonel. I'm going to call on all of my guardians from all over the universe to protect him, because we need more of the military community who has had access to these retrieval programs. And you may be sitting back, on your $5,000 pension to keep quiet, but there is a higher source that's going to judge you after this life. And so what's more important, a $5,000 or $7,000 monthly pension, or the salvation of your soul? So we got to get in behind the Colonel. Now he's a formidable brother, and the Colonel, even at his age right now, I wouldn't try to tackle him. I know the 1%ers, the little weak 1%ers who's manipulating all this. I know they don't want to have to tackle him, but I'm as a Aboriginal, Black man, American, whatever you want to call me, I'm behind it, and we need to get more people to come forward and let's join this collective. The Colonel knows of Stephen Greer, the movement that he's initiated is to start filing lawsuits against these 1%ers, that want to continue to enslave us and manipulate us so that they can enjoy our planet while we suffer. I can't live on no planet like that. I can't do it. But I got more questions. Hey, Chairman, you had a question for the Colonel. Go ahead and shoot it.
Yes, when we were talking earlier, I want to debunk this flat Earth theory. Now, when you look in the background of my profile, you see a picture of the universe and it's centered on planet Earth. And everything in that picture is round. The whole universe is in a round structure because we're nothing but atoms, and atoms are round. So how can people come up with some decision that there's a flat Earth? And I know there's only probably 20% of the people on the planet today that might believe in a flat Earth, but there's too much information out there showing that it's not flat. I mean, you can take a box and walk a mile down the road. If you could still see it, it's going to look round from your perspective, because like I say, everything is made out of atoms. But to see a flat Earth, I can't even fathom that in my mind, a flat Earth, when I'm here on Earth and I see the sun and how we go around the sun, because I'm into astronomy. I could see it literally. And flat Earth just is not in my makeup. Can you give me
Chairman,
some information on that?
Can I speak to that issue just a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
First of all, part of my testimony and my faith is really strong. The first time that I flew at night in a U-2, and I'm above 98% of the world's atmosphere in my spacesuit, and I've got that slide protector out of the way, it is more white than it is dark. And what an awesome experience. You've been trained at that point. If you lose pressurization, you're dead in 3 seconds. Your blood would boil. And I'm saying to myself, Lord, why do you allow me to see this? And I need to share this information with everybody, that there's more out there than us. It's just really important. The other thing that I can tell you is that I had a number of different missions. One in particular stands out. It was the first time that the West Coast was totally cloudless. And I had the unique experience of flying at that time over Great Crater Lake in Oregon. And I could see the mountains in Canada, and I could see the tallest mountain in California in a rear view mirror. And you can see the curvature of the earth at that point in time. And so I again had that personal experience that the earth is round and it's unique, and we're blessed to be a part of it.
And when you mention about the light, I think it's a disservice today to the young generation when they go out at night and they see nothing but darkness and maybe a handful of stars. But when I was coming up young, I was a Boy Scout, and we went out into the country and got out there, and I looked up in the sky and it was nothing but light. Like you say, it was almost like daytime in a sense, because there's so many stars, infinite amount, and it just lights up the outside. But people don't have that experience today unless they go to some observatory somewhere way up into the mountains. But it's a beautiful sight. It's almost scary. It's so light.
Well, I believe the Bible says he's going forth to prepare many mansions. And it is my firm belief that we are part of a much greater thing, and anybody could speak the world into being, and the universe has got my praise and support. Anyway, the other thing that I'm concerned about, and I will share this with you, as I mentioned before, my dad was a test pilot, and those pictures were from White Sands, New Mexico. during the initial development of the nuclear age and the rocketry on the project called Project Paperclip. My dad had the privilege of flying a P-38, taking photographs of those tests, and then later was in the development for some of the camera systems on the U-2. It ended up that the last jet that he flew, and I did my first flight in that same jet. And so the other thing that is really interesting is that when he left the Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the office and building he worked in was the same one that I retired from. And so God lets us have experiences that are unique and meaningful. And so I treasure those things and the opportunities I had to see the things I've had and really want to share them with all those people. The other thing that you touched on, Andre, was the technology. And if you look and say, where did transistors come from? Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The scientists there developed it. If you look at all the different achievements that have come technologically, you say, gee, those are really unique. How did we progress so quickly? And how have we changed so much in my lifetime? I can remember taking railroad trips to visit relatives from Washington State to West Virginia. And then as a middle grade school individual flying for the first time in an airplane across country. And now it's routine. And now we're looking at supersonic transports. Well, they've already mothballed those, but the issues of pollution and energy are significant. And that's one of the things that Dr. Greer presented in his forum at the press club was 0 point energy and the ability of large corporations to take patents and buy up patents and then stop development of non-polluting energy systems. And that's part of my concern at this point. Additionally, as I started to mention, the nuclear age started in 1945, and the Air Force, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Army and the Marines have all participated in nuclear testing. We continue to monitor and sample nuclear materials. The distress that I have, having been a pilot, I was protected in my spacesuit. I had a dosimeter in the spacesuit. When I got radioactive, I landed and was decontaminated. They set my airplane aside for 7 days, washed it and cleaned it up and certified that it was ready to fly those missions again. What I didn't understand was that they put those airplanes in a hangar, and my maintenance crew, which I wouldn't be here if they hadn't done their job, but they, without film badges, without protection, without monitoring, changed the filters, changed the lubricants, and did maintenance on the interior of that aircraft.
Oh.
Now, if you look at a jet engine and you look at how much air it brings in, it is amazing the radioactivity that was in the lubricants and in the little nooks and crannies of those airplanes. And I've recently found out within the last couple of years that all of my ground crew people are dying off, and the US government refuses to acknowledge their exposures. And so I guess I'm using this platform to say, hey, this is something that we really need to get Congress involved with to help the people that were exposed, just like the people at Camp Lejeune were exposed to the water hazards.
Mr. Heckert, I have a kind of a peculiar question, but you just touched on it, so it's a good segue. Speaking of nuclear radiation, over the years, you know, looking into different UFO accounts, it could be my own filter, you know, my own inner algorithm that's trying to piece this together. But do you think there is a particular interest in, let's say, extraterrestrials or UFOs regarding nuclear radiation that is produced by humans, in a sense? So in other words, do you think they have an interest in any atomic and or nuclear, quote unquote, bombs that we have? And do you think they tend to show up? Do you think they tend to intervene when there is a greater potential, a greater case for nuclear radiation or too much nuclear radiation, which in a sense, I guess this is the point I'm kind of getting at. You know, we understand a great deal about nuclear radiation, but I think it has greater implications on a scale even outside of this planet, to where another group of beings will say, hey, y'all are playing with this fire that you don't really understand.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I certainly can. I grew up in Spokane, right? I mentioned my dad was a test pilot, and I went through 6th grade growing up in Spokane as a young man. That's just downwind from Hanford. And I can remember not being able to drink milk because the strontium-90 had contaminated the grass, and the cows ate the grass. And so the milk was radioactive. And so, you know, that kind of thing is really embedded, and that was part of my interest in learning about nuclear physics. The other thing is that the testing of nuclear weapons, be they underground or above ground or underwater or exospace, have really significant impacts in the universe. And it's my belief that that there's a lot more to that you're alluding to, and that if you look at the developments and the frequency of visits by UFOs that are documented worldwide. And by the way, we're not the only country. You know, all countries around the world have these experiences. But every time there's a nuclear test, there is an increase of interest. And many of the nuclear monitoring programs, especially in our missile fields and in Russia missile fields, have been documented with UFO interference. And I guess it's my belief that the testing is causing the disruption. Don't know how, because I've not studied that, but it seems to have caused a disruption in the universe, and it's got somebody's attention.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
So, Colonel, you know, one of the things, the great relationship I have with my son, you know, we have a 30-year differential on the generational structure here. And, you know, we are constantly talking and communicating back and forth about, you know, what we need to do and for his generation. And, you know, a lot of them are disenfranchised, you know, because they innately understand that there's lies and deceptions, and they're not feeling this economic system. They want a utopia based on the natural laws. What did you say to his generation? What do they need to do to get involved?
Well, I'd say to continue to read and understand and learn about the sciences. I'd say that the information that Dr. Greer and many other people are making available at this point in time, and then to especially look at the patents and corporate structures that have been allowed to develop and limit the I guess the technology from my perspective. And I'll give you an example. We've had a lot of discussion of hypersonic vehicles here in the last 2 years, and we're very concerned about that. Well, in my position with Lockheed Skunk Works and their program manager for the Air Force, we retired a drone in 1986 called D-21. And again, that's something that anybody can research, put Lockheed D-21, and you'll see a picture of this drone on the back of an SR-71. Well, I knew the test pilot that flew that personally. And when we retired that drone, the plaque says above 120,000 feet, above Mach 5, and that was 1986. And so we need to, come clean, I guess, about things. And I use another example. I have had interaction nationally with a number of aerospace people. One particular writer was his last name is Pocock, and he's an Englishman and recognized as an absolute expert on the U-2. And I had the opportunity to meet him at the Skunk Works in the 1986-87 timeframe. Now, Chris Pocock, and Chris is his first name, came to visit my wife and I, and he brought his wife Ming over in October of last year and stayed with us in Alaska for a week. And part of the reason that he came to the US and brought his wife was our interaction, and we got to show him Alaska. But then he went to a U-2 reunion at Beale Air Force Base. And then a week after that, he went to Edwards Air Force Base. Now, for those people that have seen the most recent Maverick movie about an airplane, they opened the movie with an airplane called Dark Star. But Dark Star, for the first time in November of last year, was displayed at Edwards Air Force Base in between the U-2 and the SR-71, again, Lockheed products. And I knew that program as Aurora, Aster, and Dark Star. So if they could hide that airplane that long, gee, I wonder what else is out there right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. So one of the things I want to say to the listening audience, this collaboration is I think one of the most powerful ones on the planet right now. And for all of you guys that are sitting back, in the stands, and you're ready to get down on the field and get involved, because it's going to have a reflection on your soul, and the karma in your next lives. And so the Colonel has access to a lot of things. As an individual, it's going to be problematic, but as a collective, and I'm in this corner 150%. And I know the chairman is, you got some old heads, and wherever I go, my son, I've been fortunate My son been putting up with me all his life. He's been listening to me. He's become immune to most of my conversations. But we have to initiate an agenda to make a difference on this planet. The planet is in trouble. Our children are in trouble. The food is being contaminated, all because you have some low frequency entities. Now these extraterrestrial entities, they have like I like to say, a free get out of jail card, because the Most High, must test every civilization at this point in their history, must test their resolve, how they're going to treat each other, the unconditional love that they need to develop for their fellow humans. And so they allowed those extraterrestrials to come here and share technology with mentally deranged humans or weak humans or humans that have been caught up in some bad environments and that are all about themselves. And they know the astrological alignment. They know how to attract these humans and to entice them. And it's all about greed and selfishness. We have to get beyond that if we're going to prove to the entities of the Most High that we are civilized beings and we're capable of running and taking care of our own planet in a galactic alliance. So if you're listening to this show and you want to be part of a formidable group of men and women, give us a call, get in touch with us. Son, is our email address being posted?
Yeah.
And you can go to Straight Talk Network and leave a message. I see a lot of you, and I'm starting to record those messages and get in touch with you or friend you on the different social media platforms. But it's getting down to the point where it's mandatory that we initiate a movement to expose these 1%ers and their selfish agendas. This is what it's all about. This is the whole spiritual challenge in the universe, really. And so we're asking you to join us. Now, we're going to be working with the Colonel. He has a lot of information, pictures, photographs, and we're working with the Colonel and collecting this stuff together and working on a journal or a book, to promote. We have also our book that's ready to go, Lucifer's Revenge. That's explain the extraterrestrial or the terrestrial encounters and challenges. And we had the chairman's book, God's Child, that explain, get documentation. So we have journals and books and things for you to read. When you buy those books, the Colonel, the chairman, and I, we're not trying to go out and buy Rolls Royces and bling bling and Showtime and all that kind of thing. We're working on our next life. So we want to make an improvement on this planet. You can stop sitting back in fear, because, like I said, the Colonel is a linebacker. I'm a former wide receiver that ain't afraid of nothing. The chairman started a race war in a good way. So he's not afraid. We're ready to do something for our children. We're ready to do something for our planet, Mother Earth. We're ready to make a difference. So get with us. You have full access to the Colonel, to the chairman, myself, my son, to manifest whatever dream you want, as long as it deals with the laws of balance, fairness, treat people the way you want to be treated, love your fellow humans unconditionally. That's what this is all about. That's what this show is all about. So all of the technology, anything that you want to develop, you don't have to operate in fear. You got us now. Work with us. And the Colonel, he is directly contacted with Dr. Stephen Greer and that movement. And the people are coming together. So you can sit back, in the stands if you want to, but it's a lot more fun down here on the field. I've experienced it before, and it's all about growth and evolution. Also, one other thing, Colonel, you work with Skunk Works. You worked in Area 51 with all of that technology, and I know these corporate Americans, they are still beholden to the oil, fossil fuel industry. And they bought all of these patents and mothballed them because, you know, it'll break their alliance with these money guys with the fossil fuel. What's your thoughts on all of this technology once again?
Well, let me give you an example of documentation that I have. And basically, there is a predominant aircraft designer from Lockheed, used to be the president of the company, and he developed all of the original jets, the P-80, the F-104, which established world records, the U-2, the SR-71, and the 117A. And his name is Kelly Johnson. And as a cadet in 1965, I was having lunch when he received the Collier Trophy for the development of the SR-71. But the reason I bring this gentleman's name up was that I have paperwork signed by Kelly and all of his test engineers. They were flying a monitoring test in a chase airplane and developing a new jet. And this is again 1953, and they were intercepted and joined by a UFO. They photographed it, they monitored it, and there were 11 people, including all the engineers and Kelly had them separate out as soon as they landed, write their own personal observations. He gathered all that information and all the pictures and forwarded that to the National Command Authority at the time. And it took him a month to get all that together, but it went in January of 1954. Now, the interesting part that is more interesting to me was that same UFO visited Kelly Johnson's residence that evening after the flight. And that's documented. And so we've got these signed letters by all of these test pilots / engineers / scientists, and the letter that Kelly Johnson sent to our government in 1954 saying, this is real. We need to investigate it. What happened to that? I don't know, but I'd sure like to find out.
Well, Colonel, we're approaching the 1 hour because we're going to do many more shows dealing with specific topics on technology, the encounters with the extraterrestrials, what's our next move. I can go on and on and on. But Colonel, give us your closing statement, and then the chairman and my son will close us out, and we're going to be looking forward to the next show.
Okay, well, God bless you all. And again, all this discussion does nothing but strengthen my belief in God. And thank God for my life and your life, and God bless your movement, sir.
Absolutely, sir. Chairman, you have a closing statement?
Yes, absolutely. I've seen lots of podcasts with Dr. Stephen Greer, and he has such a sweet spirit. And I'm picking up on that same spirit with Donald. And as the old saying goes, you know, if we build it, they'll come. And what they're talking about is the heavenly environment on Earth. The extraterrestrials are waiting on us. They can't really interfere. They can show us that they're there, but they can't interfere because they know that we know that they're there. But we has just got to come together and do this magnificent thing because that's what we were created to do. And that's my point of view.
I'm going to be brief. Every time we demonstrate this sort of collective effort, this unconditional love for each other, the guardians will intervene and overrule the 1%ers. Every time one of you, if any of the listening audience, if you say, hey, I'm interested in getting involved, send us a note, send us an email, andrehill930@gmail. Send me an email. My son posted some other emails. Get in contact. Every time we demonstrate, we want to make a difference. They will intervene. They will protect you, but you have to demonstrate it. And I'm gonna leave it on that because I'm gonna let my son close it out. Hey, Colonel, I enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to coming down, getting with you, getting your book prepared, your journal. I get goosebumps just thinking about all the knowledge that you have to educate and elevate the frequency on this planet. So thank you, sir.
Okay, well, God bless you and stay safe.
All right, we'll let my son, he's the engineer, he's gonna close us out.
All right. Listen, I can't state it better than y'all did. Y'all closed it out very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Heckert, for coming through. We were looking forward to seeing you later on and working with you, just as Pop said. But this has been the Straight Talk Network show. We love y'all and peace out.
Peace.
Conversation piece.